As we mentioned, the effects of this storm are still being felt today. This is video from Bristol this morning. You can see it behind us where the winds and whipping waves were causing problems.
At last check, many remain without power there, with several businesses and schools in some places forced to close today. Eyewitness News reporter Molly O'Brien continues our storm coverage now live from Barrington. Molly?
Thank you, Mike and Kate. Well, those strong winds causing a lot of power outages throughout the state, and National Grid calling in some extra support. In fact, this crew out here in Barrington has been behind us at that intersection for a couple of hours trying to help restore power in this neighborhood. Those strong winds causing severe damage throughout the state and knocking out power. Cleanup underway in Rhode Island as many communities were hit with strong winds and heavy rain. With downed trees, down power lines, National Grid crews working to restore power in Barrington.
We didn't have power this morning when we woke up. It was a little tricky getting our girls off to school this morning.
Kristen Straight says the storm was more of a nuisance than anything.
I picked up the girls at school because there was a line down on New Meadow and their bus comes right down New Meadow. So I wasn't sure if it was going to be able to come through.
Significant wind gusts in Bristol causing downed trees and limbs. The National Weather Service reporting 58-mile-an-hour gusts early Thursday morning. Power outages in Johnston along Atwood Avenue causing traffic slowdowns and impacting businesses.
We'll lose money and everything in this store has to go today. Everything has to go by 7 o'clock tonight.
National Grid's Ted Cressy says they are addressing customers as safely and quickly as possible.
I think it's pretty clear at this point that the restoration will go on into tomorrow, if not Saturday.
Cressy says additional lineman help will arrive Friday. So National Grid crews again out working to restore power, but they are facing some challenges. Coming up new tonight at 6, we'll find out what those challenges are and how linemen are working to overcome them to help restore your power. Live in Barrington, I'm Molly O'Brien, Eyewitness News.
This powerful wind-driven storm is also leaving behind a lot to clean up in southeastern Massachusetts. In
Fairhaven, the nor'easter had wind gusts of over 80 miles per hour. The wind sent this tree right here you're looking at just crashing down and sent patio furniture and lawn items flying.
Eyewitness News reporter Courtney Carter continues our pinpoint weather team coverage now. She's live in Fairhaven with a look at the damage left behind.
Well, the rain has stopped, but as you can see, the wind is still in full force here. And I spoke to some residents in Fairhaven about their big cleanup. Christopher Tripp has lived here his whole life, and the tree in his front yard even longer than he has.
That was a bit of a surprise because again, that was still standing up until maybe 3 hours ago or so, and then all of a sudden I looked back out and I went, oh my God, the tree's missing. What happened?
Fairhaven residents Christopher Tripp and April Hagel spent Thursday cleaning up the mess from New England's nor'easter. The massive tree cracked in their front yard, adding to that damage. The National Weather Service clocked in wind gusts in southeast Mass Wednesday evening at about 88 miles per hour.
I started around 10, it started to pick up, and then by 1 in the morning it was blowing really good.
Well, there was a little branch that cracked, and we heard that yesterday.
Yep.
And then this morning when we were up looking out in the slider, it wasn't even a big crack.
Yeah, just
but,
went
wow,
over. Yep.
And I was like, did that just happen?
And they weren't the only ones outside surveying Mother Nature's damage. Neighbors had patio furniture sprawled over lawns and kayaks upside down.
Of course, we didn't really expect to see that this morning.
As of this morning, National Grid had more than 128,000 customers without power, and there were 89,000 Eversource customers also without power. Thankfully, they say no power lines were knocked down on their street and no one was hurt. So all they can do is try to make the best of it until it passes.
It's windy.
No, I contacted Fairhaven police and they say there have been no report of injuries. In Fairhaven, I'm Courtney Carter, Eyewitness News.
The storm causing the cancellation of many schools today. All students in the Charahoe and Westerly public school districts didn't have school due to the power outages. And officials at URI announced all day and evening classes on the Kingston campus were canceled due to a campus-wide outage. All Black Island ferry service was also canceled today due to the storm. Storm also impacting local waters. The Pinpoint News Tracker takes you to Point Judith Pond, which the DEM has announced is closed to shell fishing due to potential high bacteria counts in the water. The pond closed this afternoon and is closed until further notice. DEM says it will collect water samples tomorrow. Results will be available Saturday, and an announcement will be made once it's safe to reopen.
First weather alert from Pinpoint Weather 12, tracking the damage and cleanup from last night's nor'easter. We've been seeing scenes like this right here all day. Denise Patron from Westerly sending this picture to Eyewitness News via reported part of a fallen tree causing major damage to this car. It's one of several that were damaged when a large tree limb just fell because of the heavy winds.
The storm wreaking havoc up and down the East Coast. It was so powerful it ripped boards off a pier in Duxbury, sinking a boat and sending dinghies flying out of the water and into a parking lot.
Crews in the town responded to more than 24 emergency calls overnight. The damage so widespread, schools were closed for the day.
Meteorologist Pete Mangione joins us live now with a look at the storm's impact in other parts of New England. Pete.
Right from the North Shore of Massachusetts to the south coast of Connecticut, this storm had a very wide reach in New England.
Storms with destructive winds are always scary, but they are especially scary if they happen in the middle of the night.
Big, loud bang, almost like a bomb went off and shook the whole house.
Wesley McIntyre and his fiancée say 2 trees crashed into their home in West Haven, Connecticut.
Around 1:25 a.m., it just sounded like the house was coming down.
Some parts of coastal Connecticut reported gusts up to 60 miles an hour. In Milford, Connecticut, part of a tree fell into a pool in the family room of this house. The husband of the family was actually sleeping in that room at the time, but fortunately was not injured. Sparks were flying as this transformer blew in Manchester, and in Bristol, Connecticut, this tree was knocked down onto wires. The North Shore of Massachusetts also did not escape the swath of this storm. In Danvers, strong winds ripped down trees into homes. Branches and debris made roads tough to navigate, especially after the power and the lights went out.
You couldn't help but wake up to the wind a few times, and then probably around 3:30, I woke up realizing it was a little too quiet, and we looked outside, I'm like, oh, that's why.
Even further north on Ipswich Bay, 2 cruise ships held their positions to wait for calmer waters. According to the Coast Guard, one was bound for Boston and the other for New York.
All right, and get this is pretty remarkable. At Boston's Logan Airport earlier this morning, a gust was reported up to 70 miles an hour. Now, it's still a little bit windy out here in the weather yard, but fortunately things will be calming down overnight into tomorrow.
First at 6, we remain under a Pinpoint Weather 12 alert. Utility crews are still dealing with gusty winds as they work to restore electricity following that powerful storm overnight.
As of 5:30, National Grid reported more than 20,000 customers in Rhode Island still have no power, most of them in Washington County. National Grid warns it could take them a couple of days to get everyone back online.
That fast-moving storm left plenty of damage across the region, forcing police to close roads and schools to cancel classes.
And we have Pinpoint Weather Team coverage for you tonight. Tony Petrarca and Courtney Carter are standing by. But first, let's go to Molly O'Brien, who's live now in Barrington.
Thank you, Mike and Kate. Well, the weather still impacting residents here in the East Bay. We're standing by in Barrington, where a National Grid crew just wrapped up some work behind us. The crew tells me they've been on site working here for about 4 hours. And those National Grid crews outside today working to restore power have faced challenges. Cleanup underway in Rhode Island as strong winds knock down trees and power lines. National Grid crews working to restore power in Barrington.
The wind today has been very challenging.
Ted Cressy with National Grid says restoration work is hampered by continued high wind speeds.
There's still damage being done to the system with these winds. We've seen the customer impacts fluctuate from this morning to where we are today, and that'll probably continue for a while.
Crews using bucket trucks are unable to safely be deployed in winds over 35 miles an hour. Currently, National Grid has 280 personnel responding in Rhode Island. That includes forestry and underground workers as well as outside contractors. Cressy says they'll likely bring in more aid.
We'll be, looking to add to that through our mutual assistance programs, and we'll be working to get people up as quickly as possible over the next day or two.
So National Grid telling us they've also been in constant contact with REMA, legislative leaders, and the governor's office, making sure they keep them updated on progress and restoration. Live in Barrington, I'm Molly O'Brien, Eyewitness News.
The wind gusts in southeastern Massachusetts were some of the highest from this storm.
The Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency says well over 100,000 statewide are still without power. Now, this picture shows the tree down on power lines on North Quarry Street in Dartmouth. Eyewitness News reporter Courtney Carter has been tracking the impacts in southeastern Massachusetts. She continues our Pinpoint Weather Team coverage now live in Fairhaven.
Well, yes, here in Fairhaven, as you can see, the wind is still a big force, leaving behind some damage. And I spoke to residents about their big cleanup.
Mother Nature.
Ron Carvasiak and his wife have lived in Fairhaven for over 5 decades, and they say they have seen their share of weather, but these wind gusts are powerful.
You can feel the car like vibrating.
And he wasn't the only one dealing with the elements after New England's nor'easter. His neighbor Christopher Tripp had his tree in his front yard ripped from the ground. Sad to see, he says, considering his wife's family grew up here.
Many, many years. I estimate, my wife has estimated that tree right there is about 100 years old.
Well, there was a little branch that cracked, and we heard that yesterday.
Yep.
And then this morning when we were up looking out of the slider, it wasn't even a big crack.
Yeah, it just
but,
went
wow,
over. Yep.
And I was like, did that just happen?
Just flipped everything upside down.
The National Weather Service clocked in the wind gusts in southeast Mass Wednesday evening at about 88 miles per hour. Neighbors also had patio furniture sprawled over lawns and kayaks upside down.
You don't want to be out there today.
Now, I contacted Fairhaven police, and thankfully they said there have been no reports of injuries. In Fairhaven, I'm Courtney Carter, Eyewitness News.